Hello, and welcome to Rushing Through Russia. Today we'll be looking into the news in Russia. We'll be talking to very important figures, and we'll be learning about the jaw-dropping culture. Then we'll be watching a mouth-watering cooking segment, and lastly, a fun game. Come along and tune into today's episode of Rushing Through Russia. First up, we will have Natasha talking about the news.
Hello, I'm Natasha with the news in this segment of Rushing Through Russia. Today we're going to look at time from the collapse of the USSR to today's news. On December 26 of 1991, the Russian Federation was established, but during this time there's a period of confusion during this transition. So many people saw this as an economic opportunity, and between 1987 and 1992 there was tons of trading of natural resources and foreign currency, as well as imports of highly demanded consumer goods, which helped make some people rich in this time of confusion. Then, in 1993, the Russian constitutional crisis happened. During this, the leader of the time, Yeltsin, dissolved parliament and ordered a new election and a constitution. Parliament wanted Yeltsin deposed and appointed Alexander Rozhkovsky as acting president. Yeltsin, in response, ordered special forces to go ahead and storm Parliament and arrest anyone who supported Parliament. Thus, the transitional period in post-Soviet Russian politics came to an end. A new constitution was approved in December 1993. And during this time, you see Russia attacking Chechen to prevent it from succeeding Russia, and so they sent troops and started the 1995 Chechen War. And in 1997, they signed a peace accord, but when Putin became prime minister in 1999, he crushed any rebellion that was in Chechen, ending the war once and for all. Let's go to an exclusive interview with Putin and Stalin.
Now that we know all about the news that's happening in Russia, we are now going to talk to two very important leaders in the Russian time.
Hello, I'm Dominika Papa. Here today we have our beloved President Vladimir Putin, who is going to talk to us about his plans for our great nation. So, President Putin, what is your goal for ruling Russia?
I vow to make the central government stronger in managing the affairs of the state, and I vow to return the breakaway state of Chechnya to Russian authority and to adopt a more assertive role in international affairs.
President Putin, what did you do before becoming president?
I used to be a member of the KGB. Then Boris Yeltsin made me director as Federal Security Service. Then I became secretary of the Influential Security Council. Then President Yeltsin appointed me prime minister in 1999.
How do you plan on growing our economy?
Well, I plan on making many reforms, which include the unrestricted sale and purchase of land. And I plan on making tax cuts, which will hopefully give our economy a huge boost. I will also focus on oil and natural gas production, and my goal is to make Mother Russia the largest exporter of these resources.
How do you deal with the problems in the Russian society?
I will centralize my control over the system by silencing critics in the Russian media.
I know that you've been receiving very heavy criticism from the West due to that, but many of the Russians are very, very happy with your attempts to bring back pride and discipline into the Russian society.
Yes.
Thank you for coming here today, President Putin. Now, let's take a look back on Joseph Stalin's interview.
Hello, my name is Nikita Smirnov, and today I'm here with our great leader, Joseph Stalin, and I'm going to ask him a couple questions. So Stalin, how do you plan on ruling the Soviet Union?
I plan to rule by getting what I want, and to get what I want, I will use terror. And you must listen to me. If you don't listen to me, you will be exiled and will not return.
What is your main goal for the economy?
I plan to make a big focus on military and industry to support our very strong country.
What do you plan to do to the people who threaten the Soviet Union?
Off to the gulags!
Up next, we have a cooking segment with Svetlana.
Hello, it's Svetlana Kurova, and you're watching Rushing Through Russia. Today I'll be teaching all of you wonderful ladies and gentlemen at home how to make traditional borscht. Now, borscht was originally from Ukraine, but because it was part of the USSR, it was adapted into traditional Russian cuisine as well. Borscht is a beet and vegetable soup that is fermented with cabbage, that is sauerkraut, and turned into a delectable dish. Borscht is made of three main components. It's first made of the root vegetables, which today we will be using potatoes, carrots, and beets. Beets are the thing that give it the beautiful red color that it's trademarked for. The next component of borscht is the meat. Now, it's traditional to use beef. However, in times of struggle during Russia, they would use other undesirable parts of the animal. But today we'll be working with a beautiful cut of marbled strip, and we're using 2 steaks today. Now, when you're starting the process of making borscht, you will start by cutting the meat into large chunks and putting it in a pan to brown. And you want to put it on a low heat and get it to start to brown very slowly, cook it very nice and slowly. And while it's browning, you will cut up your vegetables and not into too big of pieces, and you'll put them in a pan and bake them in the oven. Now, I have my potatoes and beets peeled already, but you'll just need to peel those and chop those up and put them in the oven to bake. The nice thing about root vegetables is they last a very long time, they can be stored for a long period of time, and they're very hardy to grow. The third large component of borscht is the tang. Now, the tang mostly comes from red wine vinegar, which you add in after the whole process is finished, and dill. Dill is very important in borscht. It adds a light flavor and a little bit of freshness to the soup, which is otherwise very deep and hearty. Also, the cabbage, which is fermented in, a lot of times sauerkraut is used, it gives the soup a nice flavor and tang that balances well with the smooth flavor of the meat. When making the borscht, after the meat is done browning, you will add your broth. A lot of times in Russia, they would use a homemade broth, but today we'll be using Swanson's beef broth. Now, the broth is very nice because it can be as potent or as watered as you like, and depending on your economic stature and the availability of good broth and good meats and good trimmings at the time really depended on how your soup would be. Once the broth is added to the meat, you're going to let it sit for a long time. Now, as it starts to meld together, you're going to want to add your baked vegetables from the oven and add them into the pot, and this is when the flavors really start to come together. After you've let this sit for a long time, you can add in your dill, which you will need quite a large amount of, your chopped cabbage, and your red wine vinegar. Now, once all these things come together, you'll need to have it sit for a bit, because borscht is very interesting, because the longer it sits, the better it gets. The first day is normally the worst day it tastes. After a week or so, it is when it tastes the best. After the disintegration of the Soviet Union in 1991, agricultural production dropped by 29%. So the government was trying to influence people and get them to have home gardens to produce their own fruits and vegetables. Because the production was so low, people weren't getting their necessary nutritional values in their diets. So the government had new ways to try and get people to grow in their own homes. And it was very successful because in 1992, there was only 31% of families that had home gardens. However, in 2000, 57% of families had home gardens that produced their fruits and vegetables. Again, thank you so much for staying with me. I'm Svetlana Kurova, and you're watching Rushing Through Russia. Goodness! Oh my god. Start this thing.
Up next, we are going to be learning about the awesome culture Russia has to offer. Take it away, Anfisa.
Hello, it's Anfisa Ivanov, and I am here to give you the rundown on Russian culture. Let's start with, what are we watching? It has been noticed that the current movie trends have been making movies based on Stalinism. With the dissolution of the USSR, movies have become more and more experimental and less censored. Make sure to get out there and watch the movie Burnt by the Sun. This movie is set in a small countryside community in the time when Stalinism started to disrupt their idyllic retreat and their characters and fates. It has recently won an Oscar for Best Foreign Film in America. As you know, the film industry was oppressed and limited to what they could do in the past, but we've encountered our own country's first blockbuster film since the dissolution of the USSR. The film Night Watch is a supernatural thriller directed by Timur Bekmambetov, starring Konstantin Kabinsky. He is so dreamy. Let's move on to Fashion Watch. With these new freedoms, style experimentation is coming out in many ways. Screw natural boring fabrics, bring in the synthetics. Clothing is becoming cheaper and style is becoming more and more avant-garde. Grab your sparkly leggings, acid wash jeans, and neon shirts and get ready to be the hottest in the streets. Cue the fashion show. Turns out you may not have much competition out there on the streets. We've lost 5.3 million citizens due to high levels of emigration. Let's just say we have a lot of vacationers out there. Moving on, so let's talk about what people are buying. Wow, so we seem to have a drug problem going on here. Now, Russia possesses the world's fastest growing drug trafficking and abuse problem without having adequate prevention or treatment programs in place. Turns out our vacationers have found a new way to make some quick money: heroin. Measures need to be taken. If you need help, call 1-800-123-1234.
To end today's episode on a fun note, we are ending by having Vladlana show us a game.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Vladlena's Vaki Ugol, or Corner in Russian. Today's segment will include 2 questions that you, the audience, will answer from 3 choices. Question number 1. What was the takeover of Dubrovka Theater by armed Chechens on October 23, 2002 called? A. Dubrovka Theater Crisis, B. 2002 Nordo Siege, or C. The Chechen Resistance? The correct answer is B. Fun fact, only 2 hostages were killed by the attackers themselves, but the rest of the hostages that died were killed by the undisclosed gas that was pumped into the theater before the rescue operation. The attackers wanted the withdrawal of Russian forces from Chechnya and an end to the Second Chechen War. The final question is, what band of Russian feminists stage unauthorized provocative guerrilla performances in public places with lyrical themes of LGBT rights and opposition to Vladimir Putin, who they consider to be a dictator, Putin's policies, and his link with the Orthodox Church? A. Pussy Riot, B. Amatory, or C. Slot? Answer A is correct. Fun fact, 3 members of this group were arrested and were charged with hooliganism motivated by religious hatred, and each was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Great job, everyone. Signing off, this is Vladlena Volkova from Rushing Through Russia.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Rushing Through Russia. Come back again on Friday.